Hey, welcome back to the show. Today, we're digging into something every working mom needs but rarely gets enough of: emotional clarity, real leadership, and actual support. I'm joined by Dr. Julie Donnelly, leadership coach, former director of nursing, and the author of Leading the Speed of People, to unpack what it really means to lead well without burning out. We're talking about how to project your peace, shift the pressure we put on ourselves, and why self leadership isn't selfish, it's essential. If you've been carrying it all and wondering how to keep leading and breathing, this one's for you. Let's do it. Hey, Mama, welcome to Career Growth for Working Moms. If you're stuck in a job that doesn't fit or burning out trying to do it all, you're in the right place. I'm Shannon, a career coach and fellow working mom. Here, you'll get simple career strategies and strength-based leadership tips to help you grow with clarity and confidence. So grab your coffee or reheat it for the third time, and let's do this. Hello, welcome. Today I'm excited to have Dr. Julie Donley here with us. Dr. Julie is a leadership coach, award-winning author, and former director of nursing whose 30-year career spans healthcare, psychology, and organizational leadership. Her unique background has given her deep insight into how stress and emotional labor show up in the workplace, especially for women. Her latest book, Leading at the Speed of People, introduces the leadership model, which helps leaders reduce burnout and lead with more empathy, clarity, and confidence. She's here to help us understand how to lead well without burning out, how emotional intelligence can be our superpower, and how we can shift the unrealistic expectations that working moms often carry. Dr. Julie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Shannon. Oh, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So, let's start off with this care leadership model why is that important for women today?
Yeah. So, the care leadership model I introduced in my book, Leading at the Speed of People, which just came out at the end of last year. And it stands for communication, appreciation, respect, and empathy, CARE. And it's important because really those are the skills that we need today to be much more effective in our not just leadership roles as we lead our lives, right? We need to be
Right.
communicating clearly with people. We need to be appreciating people and things and situations and just telling people a little bit more about how much we appreciate them. We don't do that enough.
Yes.
And obviously, respect and empathy are go hand in hand, and that has to be our focus. And it starts with ourselves. So we need to learn to be more accept ourselves with more grace and give ourselves a little bit more um, just understanding and compassion because it's hard. Life is hard.
Right.
It
And I
really
think
is.
as moms, we don't do that. We'll give that to everybody else, but we forget to do that to ourselves.
Exactly. Well, that's a mouthful you just said. I mean, that's the thing is that especially women, and, and mothers, we tend to look out there and make sure everybody's okay and what do everybody need. And we don't take the time to stop for even just a minute to say, hey, wait, I'm feeling some kind of way. What do I need? And we really need to flip that around a little bit so that we can think. It's hard because when you have a child, you think, well, they're not going to take care. But if we don't do anything to take care of ourselves, we are not going to be available for anybody. And so we really do need to put ourselves sort of to the top of that list at first. It would be nice if we could put ourselves first. And I understand, right? At different times, the sleep goes out the window because we got a crying baby and we're not going to just say, okay, well, you sit there and cry and I'm going to go to bed.
Right.
But, right. But somewhere we do need to put ourselves in the mix. And a lot of women I have worked with don't know even how to do that. And so that's something that we can do better. And we need to do
Yes.
better.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Because if you're not taking care of yourself, then I mean, it's that cliche of you can't pour from an empty cup, but then that also leads to burnout and overwhelm
Exactly.
and everything. And that's
Mhm.
then you're doing nothing for yourself.
Well, and what happens when someone burns out, right? We have to the treatment for burnout is to check out,
Yes.
right?
I
So
love
you have to um, remove yourself from your situation, heal. You really do need to go inward. And so if we know that that's the cure, so to speak, right?
that. Right.
Then why don't we prevent it by taking, snippets of time? It doesn't mean that we need a spa day, although they're really nice and nothing
Yes,
wrong
they
with that.
are.
But like, can we take the 20 minutes in the morning? Can we take 15 or 20 or 30 minutes in the afternoon to do our own workout, so that we're getting everybody out? Take a walk with the baby in the carrot. How do we
Right.
find the time in between everything else that we want to be able to do and we're expected to be able to do? And I think we just need to think of ourselves in order for us to, but we don't even think of ourselves. We're just, so if we
Right.
can just at least think of ourselves and put ourselves in that mix, then we can start to make some shifts and prevent the burnout from occurring. The stress. So, what is stress? Stress is our inner response to what is going on outside of us. It's not what's going on outside of us that's the problem. It's how we deal with it. And that is kind of interesting because that means that we can control that. We can
Right.
control our inner world, our inner experience. And but it requires just a little bit of attention and intention. We have to know it. We have to be aware of what's going on for us. How do we feel about whatever's going on? And what do we want? How do we want this experience? How do we want to create this experience for ourselves? And that's huge because we get to choose. And, but again, it starts, and that's where our power is in choice,
Right.
but it starts with that awareness.
I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
I know for me, I have to sometimes just schedule time for myself in my calendar because I have a hard rule that if it's in the calendar, it's unless life happens an emergency, like you have to do that. And so I
Mhm.
have throughout my day scheduled 15 minutes here or 30 minutes here, just because for me, that's how I have to. It seems dumb, but I literally have to have it in the calendar.
So, and I would say it's absolutely not dumb. That's your method, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no judgment there. If that's what you need to do to take care of you, then kudos to you for taking the making the effort and doing what you need to do to ensure that you do that. It's interesting, like how each of us are different. It's kind of like if you like working out at home versus going to the gym. There's no
Right.
right, wrong, good or bad. It's just doing it, making the effort to do it. And so for you, that works. For me, I'm similar. I need to schedule like lunch. I take a lunch and I used to eat at my desk and I mean, years ago, right? And I'm
Right.
like, no,
Right.
this does not work for me. I want to take a half hour. I'll walk the dog. I'll have something to eat. So
Right.
each of us are different. So no, it's not absolutely not dumb. Good for you that you do that.
I love it.
Yeah, really
Okay,
important.
so I know another big topic for you is AI. And
Okay.
I feel like technology, I mean, it's advancing, it's not going anywhere. How do these working moms deal with AI now in the workforce? Maybe with it, we can start with like writing resumes or just implement it in their job. Like, how is this impacting these career moms?
Yeah, it's such a big question, right? Because AI is everywhere. It is not going away. And so each of us are different in how we approach these changes, these big changes in life. Think about how phones, cell phones came into use and how attached people were to that flip phone, right? There
Right?
were
That big bag phone.
right? But the flip phone was sort of a good analogy because there were people who were lined up from day one to get the new iPhone, right? And
Yes.
then for years, every time there was a new iPhone, there were people who would shell out all that money to be the first one. So those are those early adopters, and that may not be for most of us. That's not us. We're somewhere in
Right.
the middle. There are those stragglers that still have a flip phone and will not go to that smartphone. But most of us are somewhere in the middle, and that's great. You the key here is to get started. There's so much change. There's so much going on. that we don't need to overwhelm ourselves with it. It's just looking at your life and your work life. How might AI help you? So, yes, you mentioned resumes. The other thing someone told me there's actually an app for this and I haven't looked at it, but scheduling. So for busy moms, using AI to create the schedule, who's going to be taking Johnny here and Susie has to go to this appointment. And, so having the calendar and having everybody aligned with who has to go where and when, I mean, it saves a lot of time. The biggest thing, I mean, there are a couple stressors that come with these big changes. One is getting on the bandwagon to begin with. It's change, and
Right.
change. People are like, oh, I'm used to doing things this way. And so they feel some kind of way about just change in and of itself. And one of my books is about change. It's called Does Change Have to Be So Hard? Yes, it is hard. And there are things that we can do to make it easier. But understanding, there's that understanding and an awareness, understanding ourselves and how we relate to change can be important to reduce the stress associated with that. The other thing for women is that especially in the workplace, there's this idea that we have to prove ourselves, right? We have to prove ourselves in
Yes.
this man's world, and we have to, be assertive and be seen and be recognized. And so if we use AI, does that mean that we're not good enough? Like, right? So there's a lot of fear around, and of course the ethical question, is it ethical? And that's where, and I can't answer that. So it depends on your organization. So they hopefully are putting out some rules for when it's acceptable to use AI and when it's not. Women need to embrace what they can to be able to be the most effective they can be in the workplace. And so that is, it's really important that women do overcome their own personal fears about change and dive in and see how they can benefit, because the men, they're benefiting, they're
Yeah.
using it.
Right.
The other thing with AI though is that AI is it's not a substitute for the emotional labor, and that piece often falls to women, and um, especially we were just talking about how women sort of take care of everybody's needs. I mean, all of that, just thinking about what's for dinner and where am I going to go, how am I going to get this person to here, and then like all that thinking, that's part of the stress that we have to deal with. And
Yeah.
so AI doesn't help us with that. So
Yes. It can help simplify a schedule and all of that, but it cannot take away that stress.
no, no, that's for sure. AI can be helpful. It helps with redundant tasks. It helps us with those types of, resume writing. I mean, why do it yourself now? But it doesn't talk back. It doesn't, so it's not that, it doesn't help you with conflict. It doesn't have anything to do with politics. I mean, there are good things with it because it doesn't talk back and it doesn't have, it's not going to lie to you and it's not going to show up late for dinner, right? But
Right.
it does break down, and we know how we feel when it does, things don't work the way we want them to. But there's a lot for women that women have to deal with that AI doesn't satisfy. Not just women, but any of us. It doesn't satisfy the emotional needs. It doesn't have anything, it doesn't provide us with support for any of that, dealing with conflict, dealing with personalities, and that kind of stuff. And that stuff is often what causes us the most stress. It's difficult. I mean,
Yeah.
I know a lot of leaders that I coach, that's their biggest thing. They don't want to deal with the conflict, so they don't deal with it. Well, that's not effective, and it's not helpful. And that creates even more stress on the back end. You may be, sitting in your office with, just blinders on, but the
Right.
people that work for you are struggling and having to deal with the ramifications of you're not addressing things. So,
Yeah.
and unfortunately,
I,
AI can't help with that.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. AI is not gonna help you there. I find AI helpful, like you said, for scheduling, even for like planning trips, like what time to leave so that I avoid traffic. I've done that before. Meal planning, it's great for. But so you're right. It's like those we should be using it for those redundant tasks that we have to do that aren't emotional. But when it does come to the emotional parts of our job, our life, then we can't rely on AI. That it doesn't have that. It doesn't have feelings. It's not a relationship.
Well, yes. And two things I'll say about that. One is it can be helpful with dealing with conflict. So for the manager, now I haven't done this yet, but I understand, and it's always changing, right? Right now it's generating. But if you have a conflict, you can ask the AI program, how should I deal with it? What is the best approach I can take in dealing with an employee who does XYZ or this person who is doing XYZ? It will give you information. And then
Right.
you can decide what works for you. Because again, it's not going to tell you, it'll give you ideas, but then you have to figure out what's going to work best for you. And how do you want to show up in that conversation and relate to that human being? And the second thing I want to say is just that relationship piece. No, it doesn't help you with the relation. There is we have to look at how we relate to artificial intelligence as individuals. Like, what is your personal relationship with artificial intelligence? And how can you engage with artificial intelligence so that it can support you in doing all the wonderful things that you want to do with your life? I mean, again, you mentioned meal planning. So let's say it takes you, I don't know, 45 minutes to put together a meal plan. Well, if you use AI and it takes you 5, guess what? That 45 minutes, you can go take your walk. You can
Right.
go, play with your kids outside, throw a ball or whatever. And so that's where we want to be able to have a relationship with AI and overcome any fears that we have. Um, Lean in if we're having some emotional reaction to situations or at AI or our workplace or anywhere we might have those emotions. We need to lean in and recognize, what is this emotion? What's the message in this emotion? Because there's a need underneath it. And we
Right.
started off talking about how women don't always put themselves in the mix. Well, if we just take a few minutes to think about, hey, I'm really angry about this. Okay. So what is that telling you? Well, I need X. Okay, great. So how do you get that need met? What do you need to do? What might you want to do to get that need met or to express yourself so that you're not angry, to release that anger? And I think, again, we don't do that. I mean, we
No.
don't do that as a society, not just women, men don't
Right.
either. And
Right.
yet these are the places where AI, again, it can help teach us this stuff, but it can't do it for us. And it's certainly not going to help us do it. Um, and
Right.
that's where we can really make strides in moving society forward, marrying what makes us really great as human beings
Mhm.
and with the technology that can support us to be much more effective.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I love that. Well, Dr. Julie, where can our listeners go to connect with you and learn more about what you do?
Yeah, thank you so much. So my website's the best place, drjuliedonnelly.com. Of course, I'm on YouTube and I'm on LinkedIn. They can connect with me there. And, you can send me a message through the website for sure. I have a lot of resources on the website and a newsletter so they can sign up. Of course, my new book, Leading at the Speed of People, is available everywhere books are sold. If you want to learn more about that care leadership model, which I put in there. So it's been really
That's great.
fun. Thank you so much,
Thank
Shannon.
you. So I always like to end with an action step that our listeners can take today. So, what's one thing that you could tell the working moms listening that maybe can help them to reduce stress and lead more intentionally, both at work and at home?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is put yourself on that to-do list, right? However you want to do that. Like you, Shannon, you said you like to do 15 minutes here and there a couple times during the day. That's great. For someone else, it might be a half hour in the morning.
Yeah.
I know people who get up really early to have that time for themselves. It's great. Doesn't matter what it is, just put yourself on the list because we have to care about ourselves first in order for us to lead others. And I do talk about this in the book, Leading at the Speed of People. we have to start with self-leadership in order to be effective at leading others. And we have to take care of ourselves to show up in the way that we want to show up as our best.
Yes, yes. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Shannon. It was so great being here. And yeah, have a great day.
Hey, Working Mama. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds to share it with a friend who's stuck in her career but doesn't want to sacrifice her family to grow? Also, please leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts. It seriously lights me up to know this show is helping you navigate burnout, find clarity, and lead with confidence. All right, time to shut down my laptop and pretend I'm not hiding from folding that laundry. I'll meet you back here soon for another episode of Career Growth for Working Moms. You've got this.